Manifest.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. This is the Wormhole Manifest. We have an awesome guest that I'm excited to be speaking with tonight. Rian is the host of the Riancarnation Podcast, where he discusses a wide array of topics. The description of the podcast kind of goes like this. This is a show about shifting our individual consciousness and how that affects the collective. So rather than being about reincarnation from past lives, it's about actually coming fully into yourself and the methods, stories, practices of those who are working on it. Rian, your name has been added to the Wormhole Manifest. You ready to take this trip?
I am. Thanks for having me.
Great. Okay, so I've got Rian here, and you are up in Canada, right?
Yeah.
You're
in Vancouver. Yeah.
Vancouver. All right, so let's. We've been friends for a while, like online, and you've shared so much information that I'm so appreciative of. Like, you
Probably
are like
too
a
much.
guru when it comes to all kinds of stuff that like I haven't even really dove into. I don't know. Like, I just haven't thought about it much. Like, I've had all these like people that know me know that I've had all these like different mental health crises over the past like 10 years or so, all these weird like life events that have just been just crazy. And one of the things I started doing research on was psychedelics,
Mm-hmm.
and their impact on the mental health, I don't know, community, or like just the the psychedelic community kind of merging with the current state of affairs with like, you know, with helping with mental health. Um, like your podcast, like you talk about all kinds of different stuff. Like there's different. Every episode seems to be tackling some new or different kind of area that
Mm-hmm.
I guess I don't know if it directly correlates with mental health, or like if there's just like if it's just an interest for you. Like I guess I want to like ask you, like, what was your intention starting the podcast, and like some of the things that you've researched and studied um, since you began this. So like, just let's tell the people out there like what you got going on.
Yeah, I think that's a great starting place. And like, I think for me, like I think a lot of people right now, because of psychedelics in the mainstream, are all catered towards mental health right now. Like it's all about MDMA assisted psychotherapy and all these things. Um, it's great, and it's framing everything in one particular fashion, and it's very important for mental health. So I'm glad that it is framed in this way. But when I got into psychedelics, um, like I had gone through a huge back injury where I wasn't able to walk. For 2.5 months, I had to quit school, had to quit work for about a year and a half before I could go back. And in that time, I had a pretty severe depression, and I had maybe recently gotten into cannabis, but hadn't really taken it on as anything besides like every once in a while I'll do it socially, but it wasn't what it is kind of now for me. But even in that, like when I did mushrooms, like I had already researched, I think it was in grade 10 in Canada. In a lot of the school districts, you have to do a planning 10 project, which is kind of like planning your life, like looking at health, looking at what you want to do for your career, budgeting things. And the anti-drug unit kind of that happens in like that every school tries to get all kids to not do drugs. And for us in
Yeah.
school, it wasn't like do a project and just hand it in, or present in front of the class. It was like present to two other students. And I got to pick which drug I was interested in researching. And I wanted to pick mushrooms because I really wanted my friend to draw a picture of Mario eating a mushroom and his eyes like going big. So that was like my only basis of wanting to do that. But in the research of it, like and the fact that I wasn't presented to the teacher, I didn't feel like I had to say how bad something was. So I was looking into the research, and I found that like maybe if you have certain mental health things like schizophrenia or something like that, it might be probably not good to do very much of this, or don't have it every day because it could cause some stomach upsets. But besides that,
Hmm.
there's a lot of good reasons to use these things. So I kind of in grade 10 was like, that's fascinating. There must be more like this that I'm being lied to about, or at least the government or whatever the kind of mainstream view on this is. Like
Yeah.
it's not being honest. So years later, when I finally get into it, it still wasn't with I want to do it because it's going to be so interesting. It was I was kind of really depressed and I had nothing going on, and my friends asked if I wanted to do mushrooms with them, and that was
Hmm.
the first time during my back injury that I could walk without pain. Even
Wow.
after using cannabis to start to get myself out of a severe limp, like I couldn't walk without, like I could not unbend my knee. I couldn't straighten it at all because of sciatica and all this stuff, which
Oh,
I'm sure
yeah.
that you have felt. I know that your
Yeah.
back isn't
Yeah.
ideal.
We've talked about that. I definitely relate with that. I've had two ruptured discs or herniated
Yeah,
discs, and it was 2 years apart. And like we did everything that we could to try to, while talking to the doctors and stuff, I was doing like physical therapy and whatever. But like that sciatic, like excruciating pain is so debilitating that it's
yeah,
just like, what can you do? Like, and my doctors were just giving me pain meds, and
yeah,
and I was an alcoholic too, so I just drank, and I drank myself stupid, and it still didn't get me over the pain and get me through it,
exactly.
like, but like, yeah, I definitely relate with that. The back pain is the worst, and it's not,
Yeah,
I feel for anybody who has to deal with that stuff. So
yeah. And I was on the
it's
edge
crazy.
of needing back surgery, and luckily my surgeon was like, well, you're young enough that your back shouldn't be like this when you're this young, and I
Yeah.
would rather you learn like try to heal this naturally because you're going to be way worse off if you have to get a surgery now. So
Mm.
thankfully that happened. Thankfully the depression led me to doing mushrooms just kind of for fun with my friends. Um, but what that started was like exactly what you said with my podcast. Like until that point, like a lot of the time, like you're running on your past patterns and all these things, and you're just kind of going with the momentum of life. You haven't had any chance to sit down and think about what it is really that you want for yourself. You're just going on, oh, people said that I was good at this. I'll do this. So this is what I'm going to do with my life. Whatever. You don't really stop that hamster wheel of momentum. So the back injury completely stopped that momentum. I couldn't do
Mm.
anything that I could before. So it's like a version of me died, right? Like there's with any kind of chronic pain, when you go from a state of not chronic pain into needing to understand how much energy you have towards certain things before your mental state cannot take the pain and still present yourself as Rian or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
so there's like a kind of grieving that a lot of people don't get to the point that they can go through because they're still trying to cling on to who they were and all this stuff, and that really can cause a lot of mental suffering. So for me with the
Yeah.
mushrooms and the rest of my psychedelic journey that kind of came after that first experience, that was first the break of the momentum and then the reconsideration of what is life, what are all these things, why am I here, what is my motivations for going through it, and how do I want to go about this next part of my life knowing that I actually can kind of choose these things that I want for myself. So that was for me this reincarnation back into who I am, taking
Hmm.
charge of my life. That idea for the podcast though didn't come about until more recently when I've been doing the podcast, because even before I had a podcast called Shifting the Paradigm, and that was pretty much the same idea about like how does in like shifting our individual actions affect that of the collective, and what does that kind of lead to, what can that do to shift the paradigm. So that's kind of
Hmm.
yeah.
That's cool. That's cool, man. Like, so, like with the so it's starting like when you were dealing with the back pain and stuff, and when you started coming up with the ideas for like, or like when you started feeling like you were like, when do you still have back issues now? Like, did that like kind of, um, is it like a reoccurring like every once in a while? But like, did something, like for me, I had to have surgery because I'm just a big wimp, and I didn't. like I couldn't take the pain. Like I
You're
just
not a wimp.
couldn't stand.
Back
I
pain is
couldn't
crazy.
stand it, you know. Like but I'm older, and I've been through Marine Corps basic training. I spent 20 years in the military, and was deployed to all kinds of places. Did lots of like crazy, physical fitness type stuff. But like, I think eventually like my body just got tired, like, and it's just, you're wore out. You keep going, like and I used to skateboard when I was a kid, like
Yeah, I
up
love
until like
boarding
I was
myself
around
too.
20 or so. And like, I did all kinds of crazy stuff, like I was constantly like, not like X Games or like, stuff, but like I just felt like, I wasn't doing parkour or anything, but like I was very physical, like I wanted to do all kinds of stuff. And then I joined the military, and you're running all the time. And I hated running, man. I just hate it, like don't want to run. Like, and I used to tell myself, I don't want to run unless I'm trying to get away from something, like, and that's what they train you for, is like, if you have to run because you never know when you have to get away from something.
Yeah.
And so when I retired, I was like, I said, I'm never running again. Like I don't have anything I need to run away from. So,
Mm-hmm.
physically, we can run away from things mentally, but and put things off or procrastinate. But, no, so like that whole thing with like the physical stuff and the back pain, and it was just a brutal experience. And getting addicted to pain medications, and dealing with things that are just being pushed on me by doctors that are just
Yeah.
like, here, take this, like, and I'm like taking that, and I'm like, oh, it feels good for like, an hour,
Yeah.
and then it's back to the excruciating pain. and
Exactly.
and I st- and then like throughout that whole time, like I started having all kinds of like mental breakdowns, and all kinds of stuff. So it's just like I didn't want that anymore. So after several years of dealing with the back pain, and then like got surgery and all that, like, I wanted something different. So I started hearing about like the research with psychedelics,
Mm-hmm.
and mental health. And like, I was like, I need to do something different, because I was on a slew of medications like antidepressants and anti-anxiety, and um, stuff for bipolar, and,
Mm-hmm.
like all this different stuff, and stuff for ADHD. So I was on stimulants too. And I'm like, I'm mixing all this crap together in my body, and it's making me literally crazy.
Yeah.
Like I can't even stand myself, let alone the people around me can't stand me, because I'm just being like one spectrum, like one, I'm like at one point, one extreme to another, like it's
Yeah.
just, I'm either down and depressed and laying down and can't get up for several days, or I'm like, balls to the wall, like doing every project I possibly can, like I'm
Yeah.
just manic and going crazy. And then I burn out, and I'm just like, oh, I can't move, like, so I'm like, what do I need to do, and I need to get better, I need to
Yeah.
take care of myself. I need to change things, and this was already past like 2 back surgeries and like several losses of life that I dealt with, like, so I was already like, just had a lot of stuff going on. And so like I think when you and I met like about almost a year ago, it was like
Yeah.
last November or something. Like I had already begun, like for like 6 or 8 months before that, I started looking into microdosing, and I had already started to get off of all the mental health, uh, you know, I don't know what they're called, the
The
medications I was
medications.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I started getting off of those, but I found myself getting back into drinking more alcohol, which was what I used as a crutch for
Mm-hmm.
like 20 years, to fight off my mental health issues to begin with. And I
Yeah.
didn't even know they were there, because that's what I just did. But like when I started getting into this research, and realizing, man, there's something else. There's something I got to be able to do, and like 25 years ago, I did my experimentation with different substances and stuff, but it was just like whatever would come along, like whatever people had, or they're like, hey, you want to try this? And I'm like, yeah, I'll try that, and then, but like that was like before the military. And in the military, it's all like anti-drug, like anti, like, you can't serve your country and be on drugs, you're like, you become a liability, like,
Yeah. Even though LSD is
but
huge in the military.
yeah, because you can't test for it like in a
Exactly.
piss test. And I knew that because I did LSD when I was in the
Yeah.
Marines. Like, but but yeah, like this whole research, and now that more stuff is coming out into even into mainstream media and papers and magazines and the research is there, like you mentioned with like MDMA is in like the phase 3 trials for helping with PTSD or patients with PTSD, and I think that's something that's going to help a lot of veterans that are like wartime veterans that had gone through a lot. They've been through the shit, and now they come back and they can, you know, in a controlled setting with like the therapist or whatever, like take some Molly and get out some of that stuff that they've been suffering with, you know, and like in the controlled environment, I'm sure that the therapists probably, I'm I'm sure they're doing something with the training. They're training the therapist and psychologists and stuff to uh, like to give the therapy to the patients. You know, I'm not sure exactly what they're going through, but some of the things I've read seem like that. You know, they'll have it. It's a controlled environment, so like the person's not gonna, if they freak out or whatever. Like, I'm sure that they'll have ways of dealing with that. But like as far as I feel like I'm rambling now. So uh, when you were getting in, like, because me and you have talked, and you know a lot about these things that I never considered or I haven't
Mm-hmm.
heard of. Like I've told you before, like I've been around the world like a couple times, been to a lot of different places, but like I didn't get involved with like I didn't look too deeply into the cultures of the
Mm-hmm.
places that I went to, and it kind of makes me sad because I'm like, there's so much to learn there. When you go to a different country, you can learn so much from like the local people or like from museums or whatever. But like you're interested in all this like I think we were talking about like some of the cultures that basically have like they started like some of the more modern, or not more modern, but like started like now there's different meditations, like, and that's another thing that I want to talk about is because there's psychedelics, and I want to get into that and like the microdosing, but like all these different cultures have used different forms of meditation that have helped them to get through life basically, like, and us as a society, like here, like in the United States or in Canada, like it seems like it's, we're so go go go, like everything, society is like high tech and online, and we're connected, and it's just like one thing after another, like we just, it seems like it's a very high stress environment. But like some of these older cultures, like I was reading the book Your Psilocybin Mushroom Companion,
Mm-hmm.
and it talked a lot about like the indigenous cultures in South America that used mushrooms in like ceremony and things like that, and they don't seem to have as many of the mental health issues as we do today.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
so, like, do you have anything to go to just tell everybody, like, what is your um, experience and things you've learned from what you've been studying about these different cultures, and leading into like meditation and the use of psychedelics?
Yeah, well, like that's one of the things that like when I got into it, it was my friends offered me to do mushrooms, and had nothing to do, so I went and did it. But in doing that and seeing the beginning of what it was revealing to me about myself, my mind, my place in the world, my context, I realized even in that first experience, like I know that there is something in here for me, um, but I don't quite get what it is yet. And then something about it made me want to research and understand everything that I could about it, and not just from, oh, it's helping with my mental health or whatever. It's like mushrooms back in those cultures weren't for mental health. There is no
Right.
conception of what mental health is in these cultures
Exactly.
until it's a modern problem. And oh, you have a like it was a ritualistic contextual thing to connect them often to what their kind of spiritual realities are. So, and that's the interest. So even with what you're saying about like MDMA and these kind of things, yes, the therapist learn therapeutic modalities and stuff for them to be able to hold space. Yes, there's some therapy they bring to it, but maybe in MDMA, there's like quite a bit more of that psychotherapeutic kind of orienting, but in the depth of the medicine work with the visionary medicines, um, you can hold space for somebody, but the teachings are in there. So when I started, I was a lucky person in the sense that my mind gravitated me towards, like, I was always interested in just reading and I'm just a curious person. I like to look at things and understand my position in them and always just reorient myself towards novel information that I can take. And that's just always been what I do. So when I got into psychedelics, it was just another aspect of that. Plus, of course, they cause neuroplasticity and neurogenesis and all these things. So it was very literally expanding my mind and my capacity to be able to take in this information at the same time. Because of that, and not just wanting to, like, I was never interested in even like cannabis just to smoke weed and relax. I would use it as like a conversation facilitation or whatever it was to bring out more of this stuff. Um, so in understanding that there was more to it, I started looking at some of the cultural stuff associated. And at first it was looking into, especially it was the psychedelic revolution, because my first understanding is 60s and 70s kind of thing. So started reading a
Yeah.
lot about Tim Leary, Ram Dass, Ralph Metzner, Humphrey Osmond, Aldous Huxley, like some of like the original Stan Groff, like a lot of these larger kind of psychedelic heroic names that started pushing these things. Not, I don't even want to say pushing, but bringing these ideas into the mainstream.
Yeah.
And in reading those things, you understand, like, oh, Gordon Wasson and these people got it from Mexico. Oh, what is that? And then reading, I studied, I was even lucky in university, like before my back injury, I took a fundamentals of world history class. And it's one of these kind of weird history classes in university where you start in this, like the Stone Ages, and the end of the class is like the modern day, like 2000s or like maybe the 80s and the creation of the internet. So it's like a crazy span of time. And I had a
Wow.
very uncomfortable professor who didn't know how to communicate well or like do anything well with students, but she was a drug historian. So I started just getting this picture of the world and the understanding of the kind of the events of the world. Like, I had the normal understanding that people are taught, but I also got to see it from the lens of powers using drugs to control or to facilitate trade or whatever, that make these networks, and started seeing these things as way more important than it's ever been shown to be, I guess. And in doing that, it just caused me to really start to understand what was it about, like what are these things in themselves, if they're not just for mental health. They are like almost like a technology that you can use for many purposes. So I wanted to understand kind of the multifaceted nature of what all these things are, just like they're the multifaceted nature of a person. Like, there's so much more to it than often the one lens that is kind of shown. So that was really important. And then later in my explorations, I had like one of my first acid trips, which caused I had a few acid trips, and they were great, mushroom like, I guess. I wasn't super familiar with it yet, and hadn't learned comparisons and differences and stuff. But I had my first breakthrough experience, or like rupture of plane, where I was for 4 hours in the neon liquid labyrinths of my mind that made up my personality and psyche. And towards one part of it, I was surfing the abyss between life and death, seemingly, like all these huge concepts that you read about in the Bible, or like whatever's going on. And I came back down and just realized I need to look into these other cultures, Hinduism and Buddhism and all this stuff, to get maps of where I went. Before, it was curiosity of, cool, there's cultures that know how to work with this. And then it's, oh no, there are, like, they've learned how to map consciousness in a way of how to proceed through it, I guess.
Yeah.
And that was important to me, like very internally, I guess.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting because, like, I've kind of been there. I don't know if I call things breakthroughs. Yeah, but like when I was younger and I did LSD, Like I remember swimming through the like basically like the channels in my mind,
Yes.
like I remember seeing the different avenues, the different like branches out of like my brain waves, like the different sectors of my brain. What do they call them? Like
Like the neuronal
the
pathways almost.
yeah, like the neural pathways, like and I just remember like floating through those things. It was like a maze, like it was like caves of just branches out. Like, I remember seeing all that and like all the colors and everything. And that was when I was younger, and I didn't know much back then, like I didn't even think about like consciousness, or I mean, I kind of did because I was really into like science fiction, and I read a lot of comic books, and I was very into like alternate realities, and and science in general,
Yeah.
but like the stuff didn't really dawn on me until, like I said, like a year or so ago, and like started thinking about a lot of this stuff, and the influence that these substances have, like you were saying, like with these indigenous tribes, like 1,000 years ago, they didn't have a word for like mental health, like it was just, you didn't have, or even like probably 25, 30 years ago, nobody really talked too much about like depression very
Yeah.
much, like in the media, like it was just kind of like,
Well,
you
it's
know,
even if you look at, for example, like Tibetan culture, like there are legit videos that you can find on YouTube. I think they're videos, but it's at least in books and stuff where the Dalai Lama has come to America and they start asking him questions about depression and the mental health kind of things, and he's like, I literally don't know what you're asking me. Like, what are you
wow.
saying? And the idea of like self-hate and these kind of things, mind refracting onto itself like in that negative a way, at
Yeah.
least in some cultures, like it is because of modern tendencies and our misalignment with our natural state of
Hmm.
being in the Garden of Eden, of the jungle or whatever. Like they're there's suffering and stuff from needing to get food, the food, you know what I mean, like the natural
Yeah,
flows of life,
yeah,
but there
getting
isn't.
bit by a snake or something,
Yeah.
you're in the jungle, and things physically happen to you and it causes pain, like
Yes.
that's a concept and that's real and it's reality. But like all this other stressful stuff that
Yes.
we put on ourselves by being in this like constant state of, it's a constant state of stress, I think,
Yeah.
by, working in your cubicles, like
Yeah.
people, even I don't know, like people driving buses back and forth. I'm sure that would be kind of relaxing to me, but like you're
But
just
even
driving
just think of
around.
it like any stress signal that you got, even if it's like a text from
Yeah,
your phone that you don't want to answer for a few minutes and you're sitting and you're just
yeah,
kind of hunched over on your laptop, that anxiety is a electrical signal in your body that affects your fascia, that affects everything, that causes tightening. And as it happens, as you're getting work, as you're getting all this stuff, as you're worried about your finances, as all this stuff is happening, you are just becoming this tense kind of wound up ball. Whereas
yeah,
before, when you don't have all these other considerations of like these extra layers of kind of bullshit mental life in a lot of ways,
yeah,
when you like, just like what you're saying, when there is a predator or something, you run away, and that is the action of working that electricity out of the body. Now we allow it to stay, and it ends up in my back injury, it ends up
yeah,
in whatever the state is, cancers, like all these other like what are they called, like psychosomatic diseases and stuff that
yeah,
can
yeah.
very really come. Yeah.
Oh man, this is great, man. It's coming up on a 30-minute mark, so we're gonna like take a break, and then when we come back, we'll continue discussing some of this stuff. I have a few other random questions, and but hopefully we'll just continue talking about this stuff, because I like to think of the contrast between, us humans like 1,000 years ago, working as a community. We're out in the fields, we're gathering food, we're bringing it back to the tribe, we're doing all these things, and it's to benefit each other. Like our society has gotten away from that. Like it's everything. It's every man for himself, like, or every person for themselves nowadays, and this constant on the go society that is basically just full of stress and mental health concerns. So um, So yeah, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up the episode. And this is really good so far. So yeah, thanks, man.
Excellent. See you in
Hold
a
on a
minute.
second. All right. You're listening to the Wormhole Manifest podcast. If you like what you hear, then tune in wherever you get your podcast. Anchor, Spotify, Google, iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Addicts, and many more. And please like and follow our posts on social media. On Twitter, we are at WormFestPod. On Instagram, we are wormhole_manifest. If you'd like to hear more about these topics, send us an email and I'll send you the pertinent information at wormholemanifest@gmail.com. And if you'd like to start your own podcast, check out anchor.fm, where you'll get started creating your own podcast for free. Thanks. See you later. Hey everybody, we're back. Welcome back. Me and Rian here. We left you talking about some of the ways our society has gone, and it's all hysterical now. And I think you had something to add about like how more ancient cultures were more community driven, and also they like used psychedelics and ceremonies and things like that. And there wasn't really a concept of mental health issues back then, because they were so focused on like their current task or job or being in touch with nature, things like that.
Yeah.
What's like your view on that? Like,
I think it's interesting because I don't even think it's just ancient cultures, and I don't think it's every ancient culture. I think it's like something about the ability for like a person or whatever to tap into like what life really is to some degree, like that we are trying to continue that current of life through the cosmos over time. And it's like you are the novelty in the universe that has not happened yet, wrapped in madness, wrapped in Rianness. Like we are a particular flavor of novelty. And it's not about getting stuck in any particular ordinance of what we think we should be doing. It's about letting out that thing that we know that we can do because only we can. So like in a lot of these cultures with their attachment to psychedelics or whatever, like a lot of that is some of the deeper revelation, like even Jesus saying, love thy neighbor. Like that is the deepest teaching, is be good to the people around you, tend to the part of the garden that you can touch. And I think it's so interesting because there's a scientific researcher. He's from Kamloops, BC, but he lives in California now. His name is Dr. Bruce Damer, and he is the current like ongoing testable theory of how life started on Earth. That it was likely in kind of hot springs with kind of this tidal pool, like Old Faithful in Yellowstone National Park. It has a constant rhythm of hot water landing in an area, retreating back. That water lands, it makes a certain film that starts to make these complex RNA and then eventually DNA, and it complexifies life. But what's interesting is this research is showing that life didn't start with a single-celled organism that split into organisms. It was a community film, like a mesh that turned into all other life. That is the basis for ecosystems. That is life. It's communal. And a lot of the view, since like a lot of like Christian colonizing, this monotheistic kind of thing, is often like you are an individual. It's this hyper individualistic thing that we've perpetuated kind of through our societies. But one of the things that Bruce Damer thinks is going to happen as his research gets more and more validated is it's going to be kind of this Copernican style, Galileo style revolution of mind, that we are all come from this community thing. All the ecosystems and everything, it all depends on some levels of cooperation and exchange of energy within systems to allow systems to continue. So it's like from that view, it kind of, cultures that already know that are like, they become the stewards of the earth and these kind of things, because that's just what life is. So it's just so interesting to me that like we always think of it as ancient cultures, but like there's many cultures that still have this direct connection, and it's still in often these Western kind of modalities that cause further and further separation from that core thing that we are into this manufactured world of what we're trying to be, or I don't know, whatever this is.
Some may say it's evolution, but
Yeah.
like, like,
Or devolution, like destroying the planet just so that we can have
yeah,
some cool cars. I don't know.
this is Devo. I am not man. Oh man. Yeah. So like, I mean, so yeah, you're right. Like, and these different culture, and that's the thing. There's so many different cultures around the world, and some have been in tune with these like ways of thinking, you know, from hundreds or thousands of years ago. But like now, with this new, like, what is it, like the psychedelic renaissance, like we had the we had the 60s when it was like the psychedelic revolution, and like you said, like Timothy Leary and people were coming out and they were trying to spread this, spread, like, open your consciousness, like this new awareness and all that, um like when I grew up in the late 70s and 80s and even 90s, like, it was just, you didn't hear everything you heard about drugs in general. It was just like, in the 80s with Ronald Reagan and the war on drugs and all this stuff, it continued on. It was the just say no, that's what got fed into my mind as a kid. But like, me being a little kid and then having four older brothers that all like habitually like smoked pot, like, I was watching TV and it was telling me, say no to drugs. Then I would go in the basement and hang out with my brothers and they're all token up and doing whatever. Like,
Yeah.
it was just this huge contrast. I'm like, what, like, are my brothers bad because they're doing this? I didn't think that, because they were like nice to me, and well, not all the time. They were kind of mean
They're
jerks
your
anyway, but
brothers. Yeah.
yeah. But like, whenever they would smoke, they seemed more relaxed and like they were more open to have discussions with me about my little kid ideas, that I thought were just, I thought were really cool. I'm like, hey, what about this idea? And they'd just be like, that's a really great idea, Matt. Like, you need to learn more. And I'm like, this feels cool. It felt cool to be validated, like as a kid, and then I'm like, but then I'm looking at TV and they're like telling me all these people that, they use drugs, they're going to die. It's just all this stuff. And as I became a teenager and stuff, and then I started, I got drunk for the first time, and then like, you know, people don't teach you. I think the big thing is like when you're that age and you're easily influenced by like peers and stuff to like, want to drink or smoke or even like smoking cigarettes or things like that, like or get into smoking weed or trying other kinds of substances. You know, you there wasn't it when I was doing stuff back then, when I started doing my experimentation, there was no thought process on harm reduction. Like it was just like, here, try some of this, do this coke, and you'll be flying all night, you'll be like in heaven, like. But like, it wasn't. You watch movies and they do coke and they get all crazy and start doing psychotic stuff, like the media has like brainwashed us to think that, and it's stigmatized everything. So like, people need to know, I think, that psychedelics in themselves and every substance out there, I think that's what like what Hamilton talks about on Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia. He studies and researches the chemistry behind all these substances, and he knows their chemical makeup and like what their impact on society is. Like, no matter what there is, what's out there, like there's some kind of use for these chemicals, like these substances, so we need to study them. And on top of that, we need to educate people on things like harm reduction, like just for the sake of harm reduction, like, you know, alcohol, like, uh, liquor stores are, it's totally legal for someone over 21 to go in and buy however much they want, and what they do with it, who knows? Like, it's like nobody cares,
Yeah, it's kind of
and the
weird because
same thing.
it's like
Yeah,
we're almost in a society that simultaneously vilifies drugs and the natural drugs that are out there, but like holds on a pedestal stuff like alcohol and stuff that allows, like Terrence McKenna talked about this, they allow sugar, tobacco, alcohol, and those kind of things that add to productivity and this cycle of production, but not the ones that allow you to drop out of your normal established order of the norm of things to consider wider aspects of being or whatever.
yeah, exactly. And it just seems backwards to me. Like, my whole existence up till like a couple of years ago was just like I was following, doing everything I was supposed to do, like I was working a job, I was in the military, and I was like putting money away into savings for my 401k, for my retirement, doing all the right things, I mean, but at the same time, I was like hurting myself, like by drinking every day, by smoking cigarettes, like,
Yeah.
I'm doing all these toxic things that are not keeping my mind and body healthy. I mean, yeah, I was working out, like, or I was doing my regular fitness tests for the military and stuff like that, so it's like I thought that I was physically capable, until my back gave out, and then that
Mhm.
caused all kinds of other stuff mentally to go
Yeah.
on too, but like the mental health issues I had, that I probably have always had since I was a kid, like, once I was of age to start drinking alcohol, like, I used the alcohol as this crutch, as this mask to put on myself, to say, I was covering up who I really was and not going any further. I wasn't
Yeah.
evolving, I was just,
Stagnating. Yeah.
yeah, I was just drinking so that I could feel better, and so that I would continue to have an okay day the next day. Like, I would go home from work, get drunk, you know, get up, go to work, and I was like, I was fine, because like I hardly ever had a hangover, unless I drank way too much, but then I would just deal with it by popping some Tylenol or ibuprofen or something and drink a bunch of water, and like, I just played it off. I played the game so well, like I put my mask on. I went to work. I did what I had to do, but then I started realizing that, after all this stuff I've been through, like, that's not me. That's not who I want to be. I want to be a version of myself that I can look at and say, that's the real me. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't do all these things just because, society, or, the circle of people I'm with, like, say that that's how you need to be, or however I thought I needed to be when I was growing up, like,
Yeah.
in order to be successful, you need to do XYZ and one, two, three, and follow
Yeah.
through, and it's like, that's not what it's about. Like,
Yeah.
you got to be truthful and honest with yourself, like,
Exactly.
and that's why, like, the last year or so of experimenting again with, not just experimenting, but like getting off of the mental health meds, these medications from big pharma that were pushed on me and told me that was going to help, like, and even suffering from things like serotonin syndrome, like, that just shows me that, like, these things are not treating the they're not treating the underlying issue. They're just treating the symptoms, you know. And that's what, like, I think people out there need to know, that you can have symptoms from different mental health issues or mental illness or whatever, but like, to treat the real issue, you kind of got to dig deep inside of your
Yes.
brain and explore what you want to be,
Yes.
who.
And that was totally for me, like very similar story for me, like with the alcohol and all this stuff. And then coming out of that, um, oh, I totally lost my train, but it was right off what you said. Um, sorry, can you just, what was that exact line of thinking? It was, what were you
Like,
just saying?
like dig through your mind and see
Yes,
like
that's it. So
who you want to be?
in my experience with healing through my back and stuff like that, cannabis taught me how to walk again. It helped me learn how to walk without a limp, but I had still severe sciatica that it felt like chronic pain that I'd never get rid of. I'd stretch for 3 hours a day kind of thing. It's still painful all the time. I was working through the limp. I still had a bit of a limp, but it's there. And it wasn't until, and this is why, like I mentioned in the first half, like my first mushroom trip is the first day that I could walk without pain,
Mm.
even though I could walk fine again. And I was something like, what is this about being in this state of peace that allows me to let go of the pain that's in me? So that's one of the things that I knew, that there was something in this, and it wasn't necessarily just in psychedelics. It's that it was pointing. It's like there's this quote in Buddhism. It's like the finger pointing at the moon. It's like when you're pointing for a dog stares at your finger. It's not about the fucking finger. Look where I'm pointing. That's what psychedelics were showing me. So I knew that like meditation was in my, and that's like I mentioned, I needed to get into Hinduism and Buddhism and stuff after my acid trip, and eventually after a DMT breakthrough, I was researching meditation retreats. I just kind of gotten officially into meditation, and I've been Catholic through birth to high school kind of thing. So I'd already been very familiar with prayer and some altered states associated with some of that. So it was kind of in my mind. But so I start looking up meditation retreats, and I find a free one because I have not been working because I've been off work with my back. I find a free one, and I'm like, oh, this sounds kind of interesting. Maybe I'll go here so I can actually like learn how to meditate and learn how to approach these states, as Terence McKenna would say, on the natch. um, so I look up this retreat, and it says you wake up every morning at 4 a.m. and then there's 10 hours of sitting meditation a day, completely silent, no talking, no reading, no writing. You can only have certain times to talk to like the kitchen manager if you need to mention an allergy, or like the meditation instructor if you need clarification on the method. So I thought that's cool, but I'm not going somewhere that I have to wake up at 4 a.m. for 10 days in a row. And then I did my DMT experience, and that is a wicked story in itself. But at the end, the thing that I was connected to was essentially saying like, Rian, you are exactly where you need to be. You need to, like, meditation is a huge part of your path. Learn, like go meditate kind of thing. And I was like, oh
Yeah.
shit, I guess I got to wake up at 4 a.m. every day. So I go to this meditation retreat, and these Vipassana retreats are really unbelievable. And for anyone who is wanting to learn how to meditate, like just starting with videos that and stuff like that works. But even a 10-day silent meditation retreat is still kindergarten for the method that you're learning. Like it's a boot camp
Wow.
to learn it. It's still kindergarten. You have a lot of stuff to go through. So in these meditation retreats, it's Vipassana meditation. But for the first 4 days, you're doing no Vipassana. You're doing Anapana, breath-based meditation, where you're focusing on your breath, but specifically in like a circle right here, feeling and learning how to discern not the feeling of wind passing or anything. What is just the feeling of breath? Dialing in. Eventually you start to feel sensations. You start to be able to feel like blood flow, subtle energy currents, and all these things. So for 4 days, you're just bearing down, sitting 10 hours a
Well, I
day,
see you
sitting
pointing,
meditation.
but people listening won't know where
Yeah,
you're
so
talking.
right under the nose, like just like a size of the penny, kind of like right on top of the lips, and just the edge of the nostrils, just
Hmm.
feeling what that breath is. So doing that for 4 days, and then at the end, you have this point of concentration that you have, and then you start Vipassana, and Vipassana is insight meditation, which is, it's not just stare at your breath, return to your breath. That's concentration meditation. Return to the object of meditation. Vipassana is bring your awareness through every single part of your body and feel it. So that you're learning how to feel a sensation in every single part of your body, everywhere, all the time. So at first it's like, it's kind of hard, and you're kind of feeling maybe where your hair is touching your skin. If you're wearing glasses, like maybe where your glasses is sitting, what pressure is there? Is your skin hot? And then it's like,
Hmm.
oh, there's touching of my clothing, whatever. And then eventually you're taking that energy current feeling, and you're able to go, it feels like you're going into your fascia with your mind, and you're feeling everything into your organs, like all this stuff. But on the fourth day, you also start what's called a sitting of strong determination, which is you make a pact with yourself that you do not move during the hour sits. So you are like this, just like a board for an hour, as much as you can. Like, of course, some people, maybe somebody's sick and they got to blow their nose, whatever, but as much as you can, don't move. So I have
Wow.
just come out of this back injury, and I have flat feet, so my whole fascial chain from my feet to my legs to my knees to my back is a whole area of crap. I have sciatic pain that shoots down my ankle, kind of thing. I have to stretch in between each one of these meditations anyways, and I am having exploding knee pain to the point that I'm like on the verge of tears. I think I have to leave. So after lunch on this fourth day, I went and I booked a meeting with the teacher, and I was saying, hey, like, I don't know if this is for me. I've just come out of a back injury. I think I might have to go home, or like, please give me a chair that I can sit on, because some of the older people have chairs for their bad backs. And I'm like, I might need that. And he said, we might be able to give you a chair, but what I want you to do first is make it through an entire meditation session without moving, and just do the Vipassana method. Do not move. Do not get caught on any part. Let your mind flow. Feel where the pain is, where that's attached to, and then let it go and go on and keep doing your scanning. And because what the philosophy behind it is that any situation in life, you have preference or aversion or kind of neutrality towards it. And in having preference and having aversion, and that building in your psychology, it's building kind of in your tissue. And these are things that are called in Sanskrit, I think they're called sankaras. And in Pali, they're called samskaras. So they're like, Pali is the language at the time of the Buddha, and then Sanskrit is a different other part of India. So sanskaras and sankaras and samskaras. But what happens is when you're meditating and you're not getting caught on, oh no, this sucks here, oh, this pain, woe is me, like the mental suffering associated, and you let go of mind as you're just letting it free flow. You're learning how to be your mind as observer. So I did this meditation for the hour, but thinking originally, like, this is bullshit. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Like, fuck off. I have a back injury and my knee is
Yeah.
going to fucking pop. I need to go. And I do a meditation and I'm like, whatever, I'll do the method. And by the 45-minute part, like, there was a lot of pain, maybe, and then by the half an hour, 45-minute part mark, I'm able to finally kind of let go into the meditation, and all of the pain in my knee dissolves like a river of bliss. And I can't explain it in any other way than that. And that was the moment that really the back pain unlocked for me. So it's like the cannabis helping me learn how to walk, mushrooms pointing that there is healing in this direction of whatever's happening to mind at large in these states when you're allowing it to do its processes. And then Vipassana, really allowing myself to actually disconnect and observe. It allows you to let go of these myofascial and other holding patterns from physical, mental trauma that is holding you in certain holding patterns. And it dissolved. And I have been mostly without pain since, but of course it still kind of goes back into it because I did rupture a disc. So I, like, a few weeks ago, I had a bit of back pain. But the more that I remember to be in like meditating and stuff like that, I have less pain. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, it's very fascinating to me how much mental correspondence and expectations of suffering almost um,
Mm.
allow it to continue. And it's really not until you go through one of these experiences, like a 10-day retreat, that you notice the degree in which this is kind of true in you. And it's not just like with pain and stuff, it's that you are essentially the sum total of the stimulation, the stimulus that you've had, and your response to it. You are Pavlov's dog. Ring the doorbell, the dog drools. You think about, like, like
Yeah.
there's a very similar process happening in people. We have more degree of choice and freedom and expression, maybe. But when you go through one of these retreats and you physically start to separate and see the mental holding that all your previous experiences have had on you, that is one of the biggest things that allowed me to, like, wake up in a way that this reincarnation podcast that I have really makes sense. Because it's not until you let go of the previous holding of your life that you can actually step into your life. Otherwise, you are a shadow of who you used to be, who you have been. It's just, people are living shadows until you wake up and orient your life differently.
Wow, man. Yeah, That's awesome. That's awesome. Man. Uh, I'll drink to
Yeah,
that.
me too.
No, but that's awesome to hear that story, because like that shows, like, for all the listeners out there, if you're listening to this, like, you can, and I'm sure you've talked about some of this stuff on your podcast, like, maybe, I don't, I mean, you cover so many different topics, like, and it's amazing because, like, I've listened to several episodes, and I'm like, each one is distinctly different in the fact that, like, whatever you're covering or talking about, like, it just seems like, I don't know. You make it so interesting. Like, you have a way of, like, bringing these things, but yet they all kind of mesh together. Like, everything works together, and it's like there's just so much out there that we don't know, that I didn't know. Like the somatic stuff, and the soma, like you were talking about that. Like, I'd never even heard that word before, and I'm like 45 years old, and, like, I've heard of meditation and stuff like that, but I never, like, thought about what meditation was. Like, I didn't know, like, I just I knew that there was, like the like the Buddhist monks, would sit and meditate for, like, days on end. Like, I've seen videos of that, or parts in movies, but, like, I didn't really know what they were doing or what it was about. Like, I realized that they were just, like, that was part of, like, a religion, I guess, or what I
Yeah,
thought was that. But, like, and that was just part of who they were. And I'm like, that's not me. I'm not going to sit and meditate, and chant, and, do all this stuff. But now it makes a lot more sense, like, it just seems like, because you're, like, reaching out with your consciousness, and, like, you're connecting to things that are like higher than yourself. Like, they're just there, and there's so much out there. Like, I'm a big fan of, like ancient aliens, like,
yeah,
all this crazy theories, and, of course, like, ancient astronaut theorists ask this question, and they say yes, of course they say yes to everything, because anything is possible, so it's like, but, like, when you look into all these different cultures, like I was saying, like, with, like, earlier we were talking about, like, with things now, with our hysteric life that we live, and it's constantly on the go. um, we need to step back. We need to go into ourselves and say, what do we want? Like, who are we? What do we want to be? um, and and I a thing that I really want to get out there is that a lot of people don't ask these questions, but they'll go to the doctor or to a psychiatrist with their issues that they have, and say, why do I feel this way? Why do I have these mental problems? Or why am I depressed? Or why do I have anxiety and all this stuff, But they don't look into themselves to find out what is the true cause of it. Like,
yeah,
where does it stem from? Like,
yes,
you know, they just get prescribed medications, and they go on the medications, and they do them, and they may or may not have adverse effects, but they don't question it, like,
yeah,
they're like, my doctor recommended this, so that's what I'm doing, and if
yeah,
it doesn't work, and then they go back to the doctor and they say, this stuff makes me feel crazy, and then the doctor's like, well, let's let's like wean you off that drug and get you onto another one that we can try this one, and then it's just a never ending cycle of, like, trying things out, and it's like trial and error. You're constantly in this cycle of, you know and it sucks to feel like you're failing at life, and that you can't move forward, like, and I don't want that for anybody. And that's what I felt like for the longest time. And then once I started talking to people and, like, getting off the medications, and realizing that I don't want to be that person anymore. Like, I like myself in the fact that, like, I have a lot of good qualities, but, like, I didn't like all of myself. I didn't like some of my behaviors and things like that, and some of the patterns that I was, like, stuck in, and, like, obsessed about different things, and just wasn't digging into myself, and being the best version of myself. So I was like, I was just using everything as a crutch to get by, previously. But now I want to I want to learn. I want to grow and evolve, like, and I think that's what, you know, the reason I started this podcast, and it's kind of like, and I'm not sure about you, and like with your podcast and the things that you share, I can kind of get an idea that like you've been through some things and you want to help people, like to just know, to just learn, like share your knowledge. Like that's what, like if we, like if you're in any kind of line of work and you learn something cool that helps you be more productive, then you share that with a coworker and it helps them be more productive. Well, then overall, the process keeps going on and on and on until you have this company that is like really like productive and makes a lot of money or is successful or whatever, so like you end up you're contributing to the environment by helping. And I think that's what like I want to do with this podcast is I want to share my stories and my experiences, um, to the limit that I can. Like I don't, I won't ever claim to be super smart or know a lot, but like I know my own experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been through a lot that I think that just by sharing some of those things, I can hopefully help someone else out there who might be going through something similar, you
Yes.
know, and that's what like like when you and I first started talking, that's when I was doing all this research. I had been doing research for like several months up to then about microdosing,
Yeah.
and using mushrooms for microdosing because I had already been got off of like 4 or 5 different medications and I was feeling a lot better. But I'm like, I want to go to the next step. I want to see if I can, you know, if I can start to evolve, like if I
Yes.
can start to grow, like, and
Yeah.
then I did. I started to like, well, at first I just took some mushrooms and I tried a macro dose, and that like that changed everything. Like
Mm-hmm.
that initial macro dose of mushrooms, because I'd never really done mushrooms before.
Yeah.
Even back in my 20s and stuff, I did other substances, but um, yeah, it was that one trip, and that opened the door. That was like, you need to continue on this course, and you
Yes.
need to start healing yourself, and you need to take care of yourself, and you need to help others if you can.
Yes. I think one of the important things kind of around that is for me, and I think a lot, and when you think of psychedelic therapy and these kind of things, um, compared to people who are doing acid with their friends or just doing mushrooms or whatever, they're kind of doing it recreationally, having fun, like how I started
Yeah,
when I was doing it in a group. Though I peered into the use of it for me and felt some of the benefits, it wasn't until I sat down and did not move while tripping, like a meditation, but with an altered states of consciousness, that I was able to um, like allow myself to see my psyche and like be able to edit my choices. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I think it's so easy. Like these are still things that you can use just as a drug. It's very easy to still use it as escapism. There's something about allowing yourself to be still and allow your mind to show itself to you rather than um, like what you're saying, like just take on all these drugs to try to make myself feel good. Like you're causing a negative reinforce or positive reinforcement loop that is negative of needing to constantly find this thing to make you happy. And I think
yeah,
for me, a big thing in my life, I don't know if it was Jack Cornfield or Ram Dass or somebody, maybe it was the Dalai Lama. I don't know, but at some point, like I heard a quote somewhere that's like um, something about like if you can't find happiness where you are now, how are you ever going to find it? And this is like what Zen masters and stuff like that will teach you. You'll have a student that's sitting there. Um, for a week outside trying to get taught by the Zen master, and the Zen master's like, I have nothing to teach you, go away. Oh, there's students here though. They're sweeping your floor. Like, can I train with you? No, I have nothing to teach you. Go home. And after a week, finally they kind of let him in and they make him do chores and meditate or whatever. But like the what you're getting to is the realization that there's nothing to get to. It's all here now, and you need to learn how
yeah,
to be happy here now. And if you yes, all these things are methods and methodologies to help your mental health and these kind of things, but it's teaching you how to be here now. Stop going off into your projections forward. Stop thinking about what happened to you negatively. You are here, and that's
Yep.
it. And that's what it's all about. And realizing that on an experiential level changes you in a way that you can't go back in the same way. And I don't know, that shifted my life a lot towards wanting to have these interesting discussions and being able to share these resources that I've accumulated in a way that is useful for other people without them having to have gone through my journey. I don't want them to have to go through a 7-year journey and have like a little psychotic break in the middle of it to be happy. I want them to learn how to do it in 7 seconds. That would be real ideal. And for me, like even kind of going with what you said about even my podcast and stuff like that, like part of it for me in these conversations and stuff is not to, here's what I've learned, let me present it to you, I have a PowerPoint slideshow and this is what you need to know. It's every
Right.
individual has a different thing that they need. And in whatever happens in in communication, when you start to synchronize with another person and can feel them, it's like, oh, this is the thing for you at this moment. And it's like,
Hmm.
it's not about me trying to prescribe a thing. It's like, oh, that reminds me of this kind of thing that I've taken on. And it seems that when it works in that conversational manner, rather than like me pontificating because of what I've done in my life, it seems to, well, the conversations seem to flow a lot better than just a question and answer kind of thing.
Yeah.
But also it just seems to be more impactful for people as well, because it is then associated to a particular aspect of mind that is there for them. It's not being me being like, mushrooms, here's everything that you weren't interested in about it. You're
Yeah.
looking for something directly about you and your situation, not the third wave fucking, this is what psilocybin is. Like, that isn't what these things are. There's
Right.
aspects of that, but it is more for the individual than the general information that you can find. And I think it's so important to be able to articulate it as such and get people to understand it in a way that relates to them and their life experience directly, not someone else's generality.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's definitely, yeah. I mean, because you could share your experience or whatever like all day long, but like it's until you um, know what that person's dealing with and what they're going through, and then you kind of find aspects of that kind of relate to maybe things that have happened to you, and then you can just kind of, and yeah, and that's what's good about communication, and that's what's good about sharing with others. Like we can share things with other people, and you can't just like doctors, like I was saying earlier, they'll just say, you try to tell them what's going on, and then they're like, here, try this, try this medication,
Yeah.
and we'll see how it goes. But like you can't like really recommend, you know you can't just straight up say you need to do this. This
No,
is what you
exactly.
need to do. You need to like say you need to look into yourself and find out what you need to do. And that's kind of like what happened to me was like, I realized that I had had fun at parties and did drugs a long time ago, like 25 years ago, and it wasn't the eye-opening experience that I thought it was going to be. Like I was just like, okay, that was fun, but like now it's a whole different kind of thing. Like, you know, I'll like do like my microdosing or something else, like, and then it's not like I'm just looking to see what it'll show me, like what will these things show me and what can I learn today? Or if I read like a book or a website or something like that, I'm like, you know, it's just all curiosity. I'm going into everything like a newborn
Yes.
child. Like I'm like, what is out there that
Yes.
I can learn now? Like like I said, I traveled the world, and there was so many questions I didn't ask when I was in all these foreign places that now I'm like, I would just be so curious about. Like I would just go into it and like ask like local people or people that are working in like museums or stuff. I'm like, what is this piece of art? Like who made that? Like what's the rituals of here? Like, I would like to go into like like into a house with people that are having a dinner and like sit and see what their normal ceremony is for having a evening dinner, like it's just, and get in touch with people. And I think that's like something that nowadays, like, we don't have as much of that. There's not that connection with people, and there's not the curiosity to find out, you know what what is out there, what's for us, like what do we want to do with ourselves, like everybody's so self-absorbed, like, and it's like it's about me, and it's about what do I want to do, and how can this person help me, and it's like, no, you gotta, what can you give, what can I give to people? And that's kind of what I wanted to do with this podcast, was just like to have interesting people like you yourself that have been, have all this knowledge, and like just learn. I just want to learn from everybody that I talk to, and be able to share my learning with others while I'm going through it. And so we can all kind of learn together along the way, and, just ride this train,
Exactly.
but like, we're kind of running over here a little bit. Man, this has been really great. Like, I definitely want to have you back again,
Yeah, we'll have to chat again.
yeah, because these can, I could
We've
see us
hardly
like
scratched the surface, let me tell you.
yeah. And there's just so much that I've learned in the past like 8-10 months, that I want to share, but like I want to learn from other people and see what they got going on. I've got like several other guests coming on, and like, um, as much as I want to like dedicate a show to like my experience with like psychedelics or like healing or mental health, there's just so many different aspects of, uh, there's just so many different things we can do like as humans to take care of ourselves,
Yeah.
and and for me, psychedelics is one part of that. And then there's lots of other stuff like music, and all the different things I'm into. And uh, as these episodes come out, people will get to know me, and they'll get to know the things I'm into. And I definitely want to continue a lot of these conversations, like, with people like yourself. I think it's important that we uh, get into things like the harm reduction and education about different substances, because that's not covered enough. Like, there's people out there that take too much of something because they don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe they're curious. They're like, I bet, I want to go to another planet, so I'll just take all this kind of drug or whatever, and then it's too much. It's not, they didn't follow the, the guidelines. Or like you said, with like, sitting still, like you're just, you're,
Yeah.
you don't know, like, and that's something like
And
I
yeah,
haven't.
until you met someone who's taken too much or has sat still, you
Yeah.
don't know that that is something that could be revealing for any reason, right? Or
Yeah.
negative for any reason. It's just, oh, like you take more, you have more beer and you get drunker and have more fun. Of course, I'll take more. Like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
very difficult for people to land in how to use this as a tool, how to use these as different forms of tools for what you need at different times in your life, and to have someone
Yes.
in everyone needs someone like that in their life to be able to do these things. So yeah, I think it's super important to have these conversations.
Definitely.
My browser storage is just about to run out, so we do have to
Yeah,
end.
we do. And okay, hey, thanks, man. I really appreciate your friendship, man. You've helped me a lot in the past like 8 or 10 months or whatever. And I think all this stuff is important. All you people listening, if you follow, you can follow Rian's podcast at, it's Riancarnation. It's Rian Carnation at Libsyn. And I want to give a
Or on
few shout
Spotify
outs, or on Spotify. And then you're also on Instagram. Um,
at
I think
Riancarnation with two N's.
two N's at the end. Yep. And I want to give a shout out to at Ellen Barstar on Twitter for being my first guest a couple weeks ago. She's awesome. And at Crucial Chase. Chase is what gave me the idea for the name of this podcast. So I want to give him a shout out. Um, as always, people can follow our website. It's linktr.ee at wormhole_manifest. And then the Twitter is at wormfestpod. And then the Instagram's wormhole_manifest. And if you need to send us an email, you can get us at wormholemanifest@gmail.com. Once again, thanks everybody for listening. Thank you, Rian. Thanks for being on here. I really look forward to having you back soon. I think we could talk for hours, on this stuff.
Definitely.
So
we will. We will.
Hopefully your browser doesn't run out of storage and you finish uploading all this.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks again, man.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Yep. No problem.
Take it easy.
See you, everybody.